This is the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.
We'd like to welcome you to the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Thanks so much for riding with us tonight. I'm Joe Trahan. He's Andrew Seeley. Listen, we got tons to talk about tonight, even though the Cowboys aren't playing anymore. Never a dull moment around here, especially with the way the NFL playoffs are working out for us. So we got tons to talk about. Andrew puts this show together. He's been working on it for quite a while, and I'm curious what you got up your sleeve, brother.
Well, we're partying like it's 1991 because a lot has changed in terms of droughts, and we'll get things started with what's on the show.
Here's What's on the Show, sponsored by NFM.
For those curious, I was born in 92. This time last week, Mike McCarthy was still employed by the Cowboys. Now, today, Dallas is still searching for a replacement. We'll talk about who's up for the job of being the 10th coach in franchise history. Meanwhile, the hated Eagles and Commanders will play for the NFC title thanks to a lot of former Dallas personnel. And it's the return of no fence riding. This time we look at QB runs and Quinn Ewers' decision to go pro. That's What's on the Show, Joe. Now who's on the show?
Well, we're lucky, listen, because when it comes to talking about what's going on with the Cowboys, and especially a coaching search situation like this, you like to have a real insider on the show. And my main man, Clarence Hill, if nothing else, is a Cowboys insider. He has the pulse of that building at his ready. He knows Jerry Jones like no other. I don't know how many Johnny Walker Blues y'all have shared in the past, but I'm sure that number is quite high.
How you doing, man? What's happening? What's happening? A great weekend. Cowboys are in a flux right now. We're in that same vortex we've been in since 1995. And the Washington Commanders with Dan Quinn are in the NFC Championship game.
Unbelievable. It is unbelievable stuff. We're going to talk all about that. But, Chill, I do want to start talking about, what the Cowboys are doing so far in terms of this coaching search. There's been the virtual interview with Kellen Moore, the in-person interview with Robert Saleh over the weekend. And then, of course, Leslie Frazier will have that in-person interview tomorrow. In terms of how wide this net will be that Jerry is casting to try and find his guy, it certainly feels from my take that this could take a while, and Jerry's going to talk to a lot of people, because I don't know if he's sure what he wants to do. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it started bad from the first week when you didn't really move on from Mike McCarthy and you kind of got behind the eight ball in the coaching search. You couldn't really get out there and interview Ben Johnson or the defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. And so you kind of, Aaron Glenn. So you kind of been behind the eight ball, and now, you made the call to Dion, but was that a call? Was that an interview? You still need to, quote unquote, possibly need to interview him if that's going to be a serious situation. Certainly, Jason Witten's name has come up. Other people's names have come up, but you've only got 3 interviews scheduled. So you would think they're going to cast a wider net and see what's going on. Certainly, Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson available today. Most people think that Kellen Moore certainly is the leader in the clubhouse, but with him winning, it's still another couple of weeks before you can even make that hire if that's what you wanted to do. So I did not see this ending before the Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think it's going to be a long, drawn-out process, and I think Jerry's going to have to go down a lot of avenues because, listen, and I want to get your take on this in a moment. I wonder how, Troy Aikman talked about this job, whether or not it's coveted. I wonder how coveted this job is. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, let's talk about Deion Sanders, right? Because I think Deion Sanders can do whatever he wants to do because in terms of being a motivator of men, he has got that talent. And that talent can take you very far in this business. We've seen what Dan Campbell has been able to do with the Detroit Lions. Of course, they lose today unexpectedly. But still, Deion can even go higher than that in terms of motivational capability. But do you think this is more of an issue where Jerry says, listen, whether or not this is going to work out for you and I'm certainly going to put this on the radar so that the people in Colorado know that you are a commodity and that they need to come correct in terms of your contract extension?
There's no question that that's part of it, and I think that a lot of people who want them to be serious about Deion because of if anybody can control Jerry or at least get his way with Jerry, it's possible Deion. Deion is a guy who can change the culture. He's an old school coach. People look at him as prime time and flamboyant, but he is a stickler for details. He's old school. He's hard on his players. He's hard to play for, and he's hard to work for. So he would certainly bring a cultural change. But understand this, there are people in Austin who said that the Cowboys made overtures towards Steve Sarkisian. And of course, one or two teams that made overtures towards Steve Sarkisian. Of course, Steve Sarkisian recently got a contract extension and more money. And I think certainly that's certainly in play for Deion, who has a contract on the table. He's talking to Colorado about getting a new deal. He wants some NIL money, some different things. I talked to some people who talked to Deion this week and said that they mainly talked about Colorado. And he talked about, they were waiting for Colorado to kind of meet his demands. And they didn't really talk about the Cowboys. So all that's on the table. If Colorado makes him whole, I think he stays there for sure. I know one thing, Colorado can't let Deion go. That whole situation in Colorado is built around him. And he's not going to find another situation that's built around him, not even in Dallas. It's a perfect situation to do what he wants. And I know from a Colorado standpoint, if they let Deion go, they might as well get the death penalty like SMU, because that thing is going to fall like a house of cards.
It certainly will. And when you look at the enrollment figures, they know that they need to keep him. One question before we go, and maybe on the shorter end in terms of answers for this one, Chill. I think that Troy Aikman was spot on when he talked about this not being the most coveted, but you have to understand what coveted means. It's not like it's not a job that people want, but when people have a chance to choose between different jobs in the NFL, they may not choose the Cowboys as being at the highest. What's your take on just how coveted the Cowboys head coaching job is?
Well, you got to understand that Aikman is frustrated with the process. He's frustrated with how Jerry Jones does his business. And coveted is an interesting word. It's still a high-profile job. And Bill Parcells said it, it's the big room in Vegas. It's still the Cowboys. I don't see many coaches turning down an opportunity to coach for the Cowboys, because if you win here, you're a household name. Certainly their coaches, maybe Ben Johnson is one who have his pick of offers, but most coaches aren't in the business or don't have the luxury of turning down the Cowboys. There are only 32 of these.
Yeah.
Okay, there are only 32 of these. So, it's a nice word to play with as far as coveted, but I don't see anybody turning the Cowboys down.
That's a great point. It's a great point. All right, and on that point, we're going to take a quick break because we've got more to talk about, much more to talk about. The NFC game pitting two of the Cowboys' most bitter rivals. How could that happen after this awful season? We'll talk about that coming up next. Keep it right here, folks. It is the ultimate Dallas Sports Show.
Twisting the knife.
Today's headlines, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers.
The Eagles fend off a late surge from the Rams to win 28-22. Philly will host the Commanders in the NFC Championship game next Sunday. And the Bills win a thriller against the Ravens 27-25. Next up for the Bills, the two-time defending champion Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC title game in Arrowhead. Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes should be a good one, but of course we're more focused on the NFC title game, and it bears a special reminder. Again, Washington was the owner of the longest drought in the NFC in terms of making an NFC championship game, 1991, which is before I was born. Now it belongs to the Cowboys, and to add a little bit more salt in the wound, everyone else in the NFC, except for Washington, who just made it, has been in the NFC Championship game multiple times, including the Bears, who owned the other drought at 2010. They made it in 2006. Guys, there are 16 teams. You basically get an eighth of a shot to get in this thing every year, and it's been almost 30 years now. Joe, what gives?
Well, what gives is, the decision-making process. And listen, there's one constant in that 30-year drought,
right?
And we all know it's Jerry Jones. And it's how things have happened. Listen, he's had opportunities before. He has fielded teams with enough talent to make it, and they still couldn't get it done. There's a lot that goes into trying to perform at your best when you have that star on your helmet, right? There's a lot that is expected. There are people talking about you 24/7. I think that even might make it a little bit more difficult for these players today to deal with it in this social media world. But regardless of any of that, you're right. There's no excuse for it to be that long. And before we go any further, I do want to say this. How about the NFL showing up on divisional weekend yet again? I mean, we had great games this weekend. Even games that you thought might end up being blowouts ended up closer than you could have ever thought near the end of the game. So the NFL'd. We had one-score games in the fourth quarter, except for the most surprising game, which gave us one of the best second quarters we have ever seen, which brings me to the quarterback who could be a problem for quite some time, Clarence Hill. That's Jaden Daniels. And listen, this is not based on athleticism, where we may have seen some young quarterbacks in years gone by who flashed it early and couldn't sustain it. He is operating from the pocket with pressure, reading out defenses, making great decisions, and none of this is good for Cowboys fans. What impressed you most about Jaden Daniels?
Of course, his poise. He just is. He's unflappable. Clearly he makes plays with his feet, and you love his athleticism and things he can do. But his poise, he does not get flustered at all. And yeah, he's going to be a problem for the Cowboys for a long time. That's why I always say, the NFL is not a wait your turn league. No such thing as next year's champions. You have to seize the day. Everybody thought this was Detroit's year after what they did last year. And certainly the season they had, we had Detroit being the best team and going to the Super Bowl. But it's not wait your turn. You got to seize the moment like the Cowboys did in 1992 with Jimmy Johnson. They were supposed to be the next year. They arrived a year early. And that's the frustrating thing about the Cowboys. You were 12-5, 12-5, 12-5. You had as much of a chance to get there as anybody, okay? And you were not ready to play, and you didn't get it done. You see what the Commanders have done. First year Dan Quinn, first year rookie quarterback, they're getting it done.
Yeah, no doubt they are getting it done. And listen, it's Dan Quinn. We saw the cohesiveness in that team, and that's what Dan Quinn does. He brings people together, and he makes it work. What I'm curious to see if it'll work is trying to stop the run game led by Saquon Barkley and Hurts, man. Clarence, is it even possible with what we've seen from that great offensive line of the Eagles and of course, Hurts and Saquon Barkley?
The Eagles almost spit the bit today. Let's be honest about it. As great as they were, the Rams made a game. The Rams did not go away. They made a game. And at the end, I don't think that yes, the running game is there, but something's amiss with the Eagles passing game. Hurts is now hurt. He had a knee injury at the end of the game. And again, Washington did beat this team in the regular season. Again, who's betting against Daniels right now in the fourth quarter? Because this guy just shows up. Again, the thing I like about Washington is they're ready to play. They're not afraid of the moment. That's one thing that we go back to Mike McCarthy. When the year they lost in Dallas to San Francisco, they weren't ready to play, okay? He talked about them not being ready to play. Certainly last year against Green Bay, they weren't ready to play, and they got the doors blown off of them early. That Washington team is ready for the moment.
Mainly about Washington, it's that Eagles defense to me. Like, as much as the offense kind of paces it, the run game traditionally keeps it within that 21 to 28 point range. And if you have a high-flying offense like the Rams have, like we just saw out of Jaden Daniels in the last game, this Washington team can put up points. It's going to be on that Eagles defense to try and slow them down. I think that's the more interesting matchup because
and their best cornerback got hurt today.
Right.
So he may not be there. So there's some people that can pick on it. Scary Terry. He can make some plays on somebody. So, yeah, with what they have, the way they have their running game going, that Dan Quinn defense, opportunistic, creating turnovers like he did in Dallas. They're still creating turnovers up there. Watch out. I know Philadelphia's favorite, but I would not be surprised if Jaden Daniels and those Washington Commanders in the Super Bowl.
I want to piggyback on something you kind of started the segment out with, Clarence, and that's the fact that it's a show me now league, and you gotta make hay when it's there to be made. I also think it's more of a year-to-year league now than ever. So to bring this full circle to Cowboys and Cowboys fans, how possible, how probable can it happen? Can the Cowboys even get back in the conversation when you think about one of these two teams will be in the Super Bowl and both of them made it to the NFC Championship game?
It's possible. You still have Dak Prescott. You still have CeeDee Lamb, one of the best receivers in the game. So you have Michael Parsons on defense. You have to give them help, though. You have to supplement them. As much as about Washington and what they did with Jaden Daniels, they also supplemented that roster with players in free agency and the draft and guys who had instant impacts. You have to do that. That's the thing that worries me about this coaching stage because it's hard for me to get excited about the coaching search because the Cowboys don't change how they do business and acquiring players and adding to what they do in the draft. It won't matter.
No, I think you're right. They can't have that same philosophy where it's, hey, we're not going to do much in free agency. I feel like that doomed last year.
Yeah.
And if we see the same kind of thing, it will doom this year as well.
And they were in a no-win situation as far as McCarthy and Dan Quinn. And I realized Dan wasn't exactly the most popular person after the playoff loss, but you still had him and Kellen Moore in the building last year. So I realize brain drain is, or sorry, Kellen was 2 years ago. But still, it's part of the brain drain. Successful teams get the best coaches. Detroit's about to face the same thing. It's more about how you juggle those coaches and when is the time to pull the plug and move forward. And at least right now.
And one thing I want to note, and everybody talks about the rookie quarterback. I remember in 2016 when Dak was a rookie, and they went 13-3, and he played as well as anybody. He went toe-to-toe with Aaron Rodgers. What did the Cowboys do in the offense to upgrade that team? They did nothing.
Not enough.
Right.
Not even close.
And they knew Zeke was going to be possibly suspended. They did nothing to take that team to the next step. They said, we're just going to get better. We had a good team, and everybody's going to get better in the second year jump. No, you have to do things to help your team get better.
Yeah, no doubt. They got to supplement. They got to get more. They certainly have to do it in this offseason. All right, we got plenty more coming your way. In fact, one of my favorite gamify segments. It's time for No Fence Riding. Get off the fence, people, and stay here with the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show after this.
And now it's time for No Fence Riding, sponsored by the Fort Worth Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Welcome back to the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Time now for everyone except Michelle's favorite game, No Fence Riding. Our first of the new year. Concept is simple for those who don't know. I have a series of statements for our panel, and it's their job to determine what side of the fence they're on. No waffling or they get ragged on. All right, statement number one. The NFL's got to do something about quarterbacks skirting the sideline. For those who didn't see some of the hits Mahomes took and tried to flop into on Saturday's game against the Texans, some of the more egregious examples, quarterbacks have been taking advantage of the gray area and being protected and keeping defensive backs on their heels. The entire advantage belongs to the quarterback when they escape the pocket now. I'm not exactly sure how you fix it, but something's got to change. Clarence, kick things off here.
No, I agree. I mean, I've been saying it the whole playoffs. People are scared to hit quarterbacks, not even on the sideline. When they're running down the field, they're grabbing. They won't hit them like running backs or receivers. And certainly it's egregious on the sideline when they can either decide fake like they're going out of bounds and cut up field because you're, holding up because you don't want to get a penalty. You're trying to take care of the quarterback. And yes, it has to be fixed. If you're going to take off and run, then be a runner.
Yeah.
I understand protecting the quarterback in the pocket, certainly when they're sliding. But when you're taking off and running and bulldozing people and running over people, a couple of players got hurt by trying to tackle a quarterback today because you're not going all out at the quarterback because you're trying to protect him. So something needs to be done. I don't know if anything will be done because quarterbacks are so valuable to the game.
Right.
And they're so focused on protecting them. But this is not right. It's not fair.
No, it's not sportsmanlike either. I will say this. It needs to change. They have to change the way that it's officiated. But I will say this. Patrick Mahomes, if I were in his shoes, I'd do exactly the same thing.
I know.
His team's not as good as they used to be. They're not. So any advantage he can get, all those 15-yard penalties add up. So I am not blaming him at all. I am blaming the league, though. Get it fixed.
All right, let's move on here. Statement number two. Quinn Ewers made a mistake declaring for the NFL draft. I expect both of you guys to be on the same side of the fence for this one. Left a ton of money on the table. Instead, he probably won't see most of that in the NFL. Has anyone heard from Sam Ehlinger lately? That's what I thought. Joe, your thoughts here.
Absolutely. Listen, I think the best that Ewers can hope for is a career like some of his fellow Texas quarterbacks. I think about Chase Daniel, career backup. And then, of course, I had him on a sports special tonight. Colt McCoy, 14 years in the NFL.
Yeah.
14 years as a backup.
That's crazy.
But listen, Quinn Ewers probably passed up on at least $6 million from what we heard. I think he should have got that money and then went into the NFL.
You forget he got money as a high school junior or senior. And
Way
he
back.
went to Ohio State. He got money early. I think it's the best thing for Quinn. He can't get better. If you don't, you win a perfect situation with Stark in that offense, you're not going to improve your draft stock. Go into the league. I think he'll play a long time as a backup quarterback. He'll make his money back.
Can't wait to see him on the Vikings in a couple of years. All right, finally, this one isn't a statement. It's a question. Who you got tomorrow? Ohio State or Notre Dame? Clarence, one word. Keep it quick here. Who you got?
I don't want to watch the game. I'm still hurt. I'm still upset. First and goal at the 1 in Tempe, Texas. I'm rooting for Notre Dame.
I want Notre Dame to win. Ohio State's going to win.
Can they both lose? All right, Clarence, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
We will come back. Joe's final take coming up after this. Remember, born in 92, Cowboys last one in 96. Joe, time for your final take.
My final take is kudos to the NFL for a great divisional weekend. The Texans tried to hang with Kansas City. Chiefs win because that is what Pat Mahomes does. And then how about the second quarter between the Commanders and the Lions? It felt like it was Chargers, Kellen Winslow, and Dan Fouts against Miami. Fantastic stuff. And then the Eagles and the Bills both get victories. Looked like they were going to run away, but they end up being great games in the end. It's why I love the NFL. They showed up, and we'll see if Conference Championship weekend can follow suit. I have a sneaking suspicion that it might. That's my final take.
I agree with you. Josh and Patrick going toe-to-toe again.
Are you kidding me?
We've been waiting on this for like 3 years. Lamar stuck his toe in there for a little bit.
Bring it on.
I know. I can't wait for it.
Bring it on. By the way, it's going to be the NFC game first at 2 o'clock on Sunday, and then the AFC takes over at 5:30. Should be another fantastic Sunday of football watching. Enjoy it while you can because the NFL season is drawing to a close. All right, we'll keep up with the Cowboys coaching search for you on WFAA. But in the meantime, thanks so much for joining us here on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Good night, everyone.
So who do Cowboys fans have voodoo dolls for in this game?
Oh, I think they got Daniels.
Yeah.
This has been the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.